What's up? My name is Anthony. Welcome to another edition of BNA Sports Talk or NBA Sports Talk. So you have the same letters there, but today what I want to talk about is my NBA predictions, how I did for this year. Just if you're curious, and I'm curious as well, I did a little bit of preparation, but I didn't do like a deep dive. So some of these things, this is the live reaction. I'm going to be surprised. You're going to be surprised. And yeah, let's just get right into it. And tomorrow I'll be doing my NBA playoffs predictions. So am I turning into a basketball channel? I don't know, but no, let's just get right into it today. So my predictions goes as follows. For the Western Conference, I had the Jazz in first place, followed by the Nuggets, Rockets, Clippers, Trailblazers, Lakers, Warriors, Kings, and those were the playoff teams right there. 8 playoff teams, that's how it works. And then just missing out on the playoffs were the Mavericks and Spurs, as well as the Pelicans and Suns, and then you had a big gap. And then the bottom 3 teams I had were the Timberwolves, Grizzlies, and Thunder. So basically what I learned by the Western Conference is, you know what, the Lakers, they went all on them this year. They said, we're not going to lose back-to-back games. They went on to win. I thought that'd be the Jazz. You had Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, as well as some, other pieces that they brought in. I think also they brought in Conley right before the season from Memphis, which is why I thought Memphis wouldn't play as well. I thought they were too young. But, Memphis was one of those teams that just played hard every single game. And on any given night, they can win. And they really surprised some teams. Almost made it into the playoffs, kind of blew it towards the end of the season, but, they didn't really have a lot of experience, and you had teams like the Trailblazers that, just came up on them because the upper echelon teams, we don't really care for seeing that much, so the Portland Trailblazers were able to take advantage of some of those games, and obviously they were hot towards the end of the year. I had the Trailblazers in 5th place. Now, they played like a 5th place team towards the end of the year, but they really struggled in the beginning. Bringing on Carmelo really helped. I thought with the addition of Hassan Whiteside, that would work for them. CJ McCollum, I believe, was injured majority throughout the year. I didn't follow it that much. Dame Lillard wasn't really able to, have them up in a lot of games because they play basically no defense. And, in the regular season, sometimes that's successful, but other times, if you're off shooting, then your team just loses. They were awful going into the bubble. They weren't any good. So I was kind of wrong about them. I had them going 47-35. They barely, I think, won like 40 games this year. No, they won 35 games this year. So they went 35-39. So obviously I was a little bit wrong about them. The Clippers are going 51-31. That's around, actually no, that's not even close to what they finished. They performed better than I thought they would. I thought they'd be a little bit more lackadaisical throughout the season. And, they beat LeBron a couple times. They played good in the games that they needed to, but they also lost games to teams like the Kings. We're not playing this back-to-back. We're looking for the long-term success. No one's going to remember this night where we lose to the Kings by 5 points or even 15 points. They're going to remember us going to Staples Center, which they thought, and taking on LeBron. So, yeah, that's what I learned about them. The Rockets really went all in. I thought they'd go all in. I had them at a 3 seed. They finished at a 4 seed. They went 44-28. I had them going 53-29. So a little bit off. I thought they'd be a little bit better than what they ended up being, but they kind of tanked towards the end of the bubble just a little bit. And obviously the Russell Westbrook being hurt, that didn't really help them. They had a stretch during the season where they didn't really play good basketball. So I over-expected how good they did. The next, the Nuggets, 55-27. They went 46-27. So they would have had to go on like a 9-game winning streak. I thought, this is the young team coming into its own. You had some surprise players throughout the entire year, and obviously you still have those top 2 key players that you have on your team. And I think this team is focused. They have a home court advantage during the season on any given night, but I think they're going to be hurt by that in the playoffs this year. I don't expect them to do well, but we can talk about that more tomorrow. I had the Warriors making the playoffs, but that's before Steph Curry went down. That's when we had optimism that Klay Thompson was coming back. That's when they had D'Angelo Russell. That's when, the Draymond Green was still, you didn't know what you were expecting from him. So I thought they just good coaching, good team, history of winning, but, sometimes the team just tanks. I didn't believe that would happen, but they were throwing out nobodies there. And the culture problem, maybe, but they're going to have like the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overall pick this year, so they're going to rebound right back next year. Wouldn't be surprised if they're a playoff team next year. Then I had the Kings at 43-39. I thought Luke Walton would bring something special to this team. I thought they had something going, but that team that had like so scrappy and something going was the Oklahoma City Thunder, who had it 22-60. He kind of just swapped those 2 teams. Obviously, I like De'Aaron Fox and what he brings. And you also had some veterans that they brought into that team. But it was really Oklahoma City that shined. I I really underexpected them. So we had Chris Paul, and you had still had Danilo Gallinari, and then you had some young guys, Dennis Schroeder, who's not really that young, but that just came onto this team. So some dogs like with Billy Donovan, just kind of like a college team, just scrappy and wanting to win. They're like, yeah, everyone thinks we're gonna suck. That's usually what happens with the team that everyone thinks is gonna suck. So I should really learn from that. And yeah, that's pretty much all the recap I had. I didn't have the Spurs making the playoffs. That happened. I had the Mavericks barely missing out on the playoffs at 43-39. That's about where they finished. And yeah, that's pretty much all the recap for there. And then finally, the Phoenix Suns. I was really high on them. Actually, in one of my mocks in the beginning, I had the Phoenix Suns making the playoffs. And I'm like, I don't think they're quite yet. I like Monty Williams. I like their coaching. I had them at 39-43. And they finished 34-39, which is about, the same winning percentage there. All right, let's move on to the Eastern Conference. I had the Milwaukee Bucks at the first seed, followed by the Sixers and Pacers. Then a little bit of a gap between them. Then I had the Raptors, Celtics, Nets, Heat, and Magic. Barely missing out on the playoffs was the Pistons, Hawks, Knicks, Bulls, Cavaliers, and finally the worst team, the Wizards. Wizards, worst team. Wizards are the worst. Anyway, they ended up almost making the playoffs, ninth place, but close but no cigar. And they didn't even get to that play-in tournament, the 4.5 games like that. So let's highlight that I got all 8 playoff teams. In the Western Conference, I had 6, so I was 14 for 16. That has to count for something. I wasn't expecting the Warriors to suck, and I thought the Kings would surprise this year, and obviously the Mavericks and the Thunder were those 2 other teams that ended up making it. So yeah, let's recap the Bucks. The Bucks I just knew were coming game in, game out. They were hungry. I thought they'd be a little bit less successful this year because it would be more focused towards the playoffs. They ended up being even better with the improvement from Giannis. You added some pieces like Kyle Korver, but you also lost some pieces. They lost Kyle Korver, sorry. So I thought they lost some pieces throughout the entire the year before. They lost a player to Europe. They also lost a player to Indiana. So, I didn't think that'd be that good. Then I had the 76ers. I really thought that, in the beginning, I'm like, I'm a 76ers fan. I'm like a low-key 76ers fan. That's my backup team. My actual team is the Knicks. So I said, I don't trust the 76ers. We're going to have them a little bit higher because of my bias towards them. Then Pacers, they're just a well-coached team. It doesn't matter who they bring out there. Obviously, Oladipo, that was going to be a problem. But I thought that they were one of those scrappy teams like the Nets who just win games throughout the entire season. Then I had the Raptors at 46-36. They ended up going 53-19. Wow, just a very much of a surprise team. I didn't think they'd fall off by that much. I had them at number 4 seed. They ended up being a number 2 seed. So obviously not that much of a drop off, but definitely did exceed my expectations. I thought, with the loss of Denny Green, the loss of DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard, even though they all didn't play on the team at the same time, that's still a bunch of losses. But you had guys that step up. And then you have the Celtics and Nets. I thought that the Nets would be a little bit better than the year before, but I wasn't expecting to be great. Kyrie Irving had the best stats, but he's a team obliterator. It's one of those things. Are the Nets going to be successful in the future? I don't know. It feels like whoever they roll out there, they're successful. You could say the bubble is a little bit of a fluff because they play teams like Milwaukee, you didn't care, but the team wins when Kawhi Leonard doesn't play for them. They ended up being at about 500 during the season. I had them 8 games above 500, but a lot of people had them above that. I probably should have faded them a little bit more in retrospect. Celtics had 46-36. I think that was an improvement from last year, given the same thing. I'm not too sure how many wins they had the previous year, but it's around the same. I thought that, Kemba Walker was a great addition to this team. Again, the Kawhi Leonard effect. I thought the Celtics would gel together because you have the growth of some players like Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. So that's that. And by the way, I don't know a whole bunch about basketball. I'm just trying to give you the basics. I'm not pretending like I know pick and rolls and shit. I'm just trying to give the basics. And then the Heat and the Magic at about 500. I had them. Magic were 7 games under 500, but I looked at them like Aaron Gordon. Feels like they have something going special there. So it's kind of my thoughts. And I thought Jimmy Butler could bring something special to the Heat. So I'm like, I can't not have them in the playoffs. I thought the Dwayne Wade thing kind of sucked a little bit of air of them last year. And this year it's like, let's move on. And some young and upcoming players look solid for them. And then, for the non-playoff teams, it was pretty much a shit show. I mean, the Pistons had them barely under 500. They got rid of Andre Drummond midseason to the Cavaliers. I'm not sure what that trade was all about. I think he just didn't want to play for the Pistons anymore, and he wanted out. So he just moved 200 miles away. And then had the Hawks, who I thought, with what do you call it? Who'd they get? Trey. What's the name I'm trying to think? The Trae Young. That's the name. With Trae Young, I thought that they'd take a step up this year because they're a young, kind of scrappy team. I also like some of the young additions that they made in the offseason. So I'm like, yeah, this team could be fairly solid. They ended up second to last place at 20-47. So that was a bit of a surprise. The Knicks had 32-50 because I'm like, you have a bunch of young players on this team, and they want to prove something with their coach. You had the third overall pick, but they kind of fell a little bit flat. They had some minor flashes, but overall, you don't see like the pieces on this team. You still don't. Kevin Knox, like, is he really the piece that we're going to have in the future? Like, we need something more than that. And I felt a little bit of a dud from the free agency period. And then the Bulls, I had an under bet for them. They ended up going under. I had them at 29-53. And they ended up finishing with 22 wins. So I was pretty much dead right about the Bulls. Just without Michael Jordan, they're not a good team. But without Michael Jordan or Derrick Rose, they're historically not a good franchise. The Cavaliers, I thought they'd take a little bit of a step up because of that young talent with like Sexton. I thought they'll be improving, but they ended up not really that much. It was about tied from what I thought. And then the Wizards, I thought Bradley Beal they'd give up. They ended up pushing towards the end of the season, but still only 25 wins. I had them at 23 wins in that 82, so I guess they overexceeded my expectations. And then last place I had the Charlotte Hornets, who, by the way, were the first team out. I don't know what, I didn't really pay attention to them that much in the offseason. Not the offseason, during the season. But hey, they weren't bad. Actually, no, they're pretty bad. 23-42. Like, just because they're ninth place doesn't mean they weren't bad. Like, the gap between 8 and 9, it was a 452 and then a 354. So that's around 101%. So that's around 8.5 games, just doing my quick maths here. So that's my NBA predictions. I did fairly solid. And then tomorrow, what we'll do is my playoff predictions. I'll recount my playoff predictions and then actually give my playoff predictions for this year and probably enter the NBA bracket tournament.